This video series on my perspective of the modular portable antenna system is sponsored by Chameleon Antenna. Last week, we broke the paradigm that the MPAS is just the 2.0. It's a family of a multitude of interchangeable antenna parts, and it includes the light and the tactical delta loop. I think the number of total configurations is really just left up to your imagination. Today, as we enter into the topic of mounts and we see all the configuration options available to us, well, those options just grow exponentially. There's an application that is set up for almost any scenario you could possibly find yourself in. Not many portable antenna installations will capture the attention quite like a tactical delta loop flying atop a 20-foot POTA. Unless, of course, you own the 25-foot POTA, then I guess you can one-up me. Other than that, this is awfully impressive looking, and the performance of this is phenomenal. Last week, we talked about the mechanical interchangeability of the various antenna components, and that's what we're going to do today with these mounts. Again, later in this series, we'll talk about performance, do some whisper maps, do some comparisons. Right now, how many antenna systems can we get from this? Spoiler alert, all three of those systems we looked at last week go on all of these. 3 systems on the UCM, universal clamp mount, 3 on the jaw mount, 3 on the spike. Obviously, the spike comes with them all. This is the topper to the POTA. All 3 systems go on the POTA, and all 3 systems go on the FG mast, the 12-foot fiberglass mast. Let's get to it. We have 3 antenna systems in the MPAS family. We have 5 installation mounts. And that's really just scratching the surface to say that there are 15 different installation options because there are many various iterations along the way. Do you really have that much time? Well, let's go over the basics and then you use your creativity from there. Everything starts with the CHA spike. And then we have either a hybrid micro or mini. I have the micro here, both in the original black Delrin, which is several years old and looks like new. And then I have it in the white Delrin. All of these come with a 3/8 by 24 stud on the bottom, and all of these have the female 3/8 by 24 thread. So the micro or mini goes into every one of these mounts where we have the 3/8 by 24 thread. Everything all the way up to the POTA mast topper as well as the top of the fiberglass mast. All of these 3/8 by 24 configuration. So we mount these together and then we put whatever vertical or wire we want on top of the micro or mini. Let's get a look at some of these. With our spike in the ground, let's go ahead and get these 3 antennas up in the air. Let's do triple time while we put together the military extension and the military whip to give us that 18-foot, 2-inch long vertical antenna. When you go to screw these 2 parts together, try to put them on as flat a surface as possible. That will make putting the 2 together that much easier. And then let's stay consistent throughout the rest of this video through all of the different installations. Directly above me, we will always have the CHA tactical delta loop, and then up in the top left-hand corner, we'll always have our MPAS 2.0, and then directly across from me, we'll always have our light system, and perhaps that'll make following along a little bit easier for you. The light goes together very quickly. The 2.0 goes up rather quickly once we have those 2 antennas screwed together. And then the tactical delta loop is the one that takes the longest amount of time. It's not a long time. It's still a very quick installation antenna, but it just takes a little bit longer. We need to put that hub on top of the ground spike. Then we put our micro or mini on one side of the hub, and then we put an SS17 on top of the mini, and then we put the SS17 on the other side of the hub. We have a V shape once we're done, essentially an upside down triangle. This wire gets clipped to both sides of these SS17s. Just extend your SS17 a little bit. Take the little wire loop, put it over the ball on the end of the SS17. That'll provide the strain relief as you put that clip on the end of that telescoping antenna. I'll show you a very close-up picture of that in just a second. Here we are looking at the top of one of the SS17s coming across the wire that extends between the 2 in this upside down triangle, and here we are. There is the close-up picture of how that clip attaches and how the wire loop goes over top of the ball on the SS17. A very impressive antenna setup, especially when you get it on top of the fiberglass mast and the POTA mast. Okay, you're smart enough to see where we're headed. 3 basic antenna installations, not all the possible variations, or we'll be here forever on the 5 different mounts. Stick around to the end. I can guarantee you're going to get some pro tips along the way that maybe you hadn't thought of up to this point in time. I'll do my part in keeping it as brief as possible. No radial wire setups here. I'm interested in the mechanical interchangeability between the components. We'll worry about radials and performance in future videos. And then I'm going to keep that 4 video per window format as we do each one of the installations. That'll best utilize your time. Let's get a look at this jaw mount so we can understand some pro tips here. Pro tip number 1, this thing is unbelievably strong. It is a height is might antenna type of mount. This thing can be clamped onto anything and it will hold up your mount. By anything, I mean any post, whether it's a round post, a square tubular post, anything that can hold up the antennas. You put this on something that's a little bit wimpy, it's going to come down because this is a height is might type of antenna. It can handle the MPAS light. It can handle the MPAS 2.0 where the vertical is almost 20 feet in the air. It can handle the tactical delta loop, and you'll see that here in just a few moments. One more pro tip here, if you use the right type of fitting, not only can you use this with your micro and mini and take your coax feed off of this unit here, but you can put your SS17 right into the 3/8 by 24 fitting, bring your coax out the bottom, and then you have the opportunity to tune and use a telescoping antenna if that's how you want to roll. The jaw mount can be adjusted via Allen wrench to attach to horizontal as well as vertical tubing. Get it clamped on so it can hold your height as might antenna system, get your micro or mini on, and you're ready to install whichever antenna you want to operate with. Of course, if you're using the tactical delta loop, you're going to want to start with that hub, then get your micro or mini, your 2 SS17s, and your wire that connects at the top of them, and we'll round out this installation with that view at the end. In the top left-hand corner, you're going to see me take the bottom section of the MPAS 2.0, almost 20-foot vertical antenna, break it free, and just start to thread it in my micro. Then I carefully raise up the balance of the antenna into the air so as not to stress the joints of those antenna systems, and then let that extension come down on top of section number 1. To the left of me, you see me doing an aerial view of my MPAS light, and now I'm going to show you the pro tip. What do you do when you know that fence is going to interfere with antenna performance? Well, keep everything low enough so you can get it attached with your mount and then walk it up that pole. And even in spite of the wind, I was able to accomplish that and get it firmly attached. Here we are with the final installation of the tactical delta loop, the wires attached. And you can see as I get to the end of extending those SS17s, how the 2 SS17s begin to bow in towards each other at the top. And that's how you know you've completed the installation of your tactical delta loop. The UCM Universal Clamp Mount is similar in design, durability, and strength to its cousin, the jaw mount. This unit starts off as a full-length I-beam, which is then cut down into pieces which are 2.5 inches wide. One flange is milled off, and then the entire piece is deburred so that you are protected from scratches and cuts. It's sent out for anodize, and then premium hardware is installed so this unit can stand up to time and to weather. I use the term height is might because that's the type of antenna systems that Chameleon provides to us. There are smaller antenna systems out there for portable, but we get functionality and performance out of taller antennas. That's why we use the phrase height is might, and we commonly accept that as a reality in amateur radio. You don't have to be afraid to put an SS17 on top of this, a micro or a mini, and a tactical delta loop. This can handle that. But let's talk about that SS17. So one of the pro tips I gave you on the jaw mount was to put the type of fitting on here that will accept an SS17 or other telescoping antenna. And then you take your coax out the bottom of this. Some hams that are newer may not realize this. You can still use this with your micro or mini and just ignore the coax fitting on the bottom and use the coax fitting on your micro or mini. So this becomes a very versatile fitting. You can put this type of fitting on this UCM as well, and then you can use that with your micro mini or directly put your SS17 onto this. A wooden bench, bleacher, or picnic table is the ideal location to use the UCM Of course, next on goes our micro or mini, or if we're going to install the tactical delta loop, you know what we do. We start with the hub. Here in a second, the top left-hand corner, a few more tips on that MPAS vertical. Take those two sections of that vertical antenna and screw them together on a flat surface. That makes working with them easier. Bottom left-hand corner, here in a second, we're going to do an aerial of that MPAS vertical because we just run out of content for that light. It goes together in seconds. Two more tips on that MPAS vertical in the top left-hand corner. Keep your hands as far apart as possible. Steady up high as you're screwing it into that micro or mini, or break off the bottom section as I just showed a second ago. Of course, we always end with a view of installation for the tactical delta loop because it just takes a little bit longer. And by longer, I mean another minute. The hardest part of this is just making sure you don't step on the wire as you extend those two sections or those two SS17s. So just keep your eye on where that wire is. You could just see there it got caught under my arm. That's the hardest part of installing this. Other than that, it's a piece of cake. It functions incredibly well. It gets out and it's just cool looking. What more can I say? Let's get a look at the robust portable masts from Chameleon, starting with the FG12. Let's just start with the top section because it tells the story, and then we'll get out into the field and show some actual installations. By now you're getting the common theme. 3 antennas with all of their variations. What's the MPAS up to? 10, 12? I don't know. The number of installation options, people just keep coming up with ideas for that thing. I'm hoping to show you some ones you haven't thought of yet. And then we have the 5 mounts. Of course, the POTA mast is not yet represented here on the tabletop, and that's my favorite of all. But when I first received this fiberglass mast from Chameleon, if you saw my original review on this, and I'll leave a link in the description below, I literally started laughing when I got it in my hands. Even those of whom we have come to have high expectations sometimes surpass them beyond our imagination. This thing is robust. I just couldn't believe it when I got my hands on it. Let's just get a look at the wall thickness of this fiberglass. Let's compare it to my pinky finger. This is the top section. It is beefy. This thing will fly the tactical delta loop. The top has a 3/8 by 24. It has additional holes in here that you could use to fly other antennas. It comes with an alternate mount that you can use to fly a dipole. But this 3/8 by 24 is what I'm interested in for the installations that I'm going to show you today because, yep, it'll handle the MPAS, the light, and the tactical delta loop. If it seems like I'm repeating myself, I am. That's due to the Lego-like system that Chameleon has designed and developed for us. Interchangeable antenna components with multiple mount configurations to give us the maximum number of antenna installations to meet every use case. Here I'm just showing an aerial view so you can see how windy it was the day that I was putting these antennas atop the fiberglass mast. Top right-hand corner, I'm doing that tactical delta loop and high speed. It's about time that kept up with the rest of the videos. Bottom left, I'm pulling far back so you can see that the antennas from Chameleon just kind of disappear. That's good for HOA usage. Top left-hand corner, just remember with that MPAS, if you keep one hand really high when you're trying to screw it into the micro or mini, that helps you steady it and get those threads in. The way fiberglass masts work, you need to pull them out slowly section by section because they can't, by design, have a catch on the bottom. So you just need to make sure that you don't pull one section out too far and disengage it from the next section. Otherwise, you have a very top-heavy pole in your hands to try to control. You'll see me here. I just go a little bit too far. I don't pull it out, but this is just a word of caution. Raise these sections slowly. I do want to point out here, you may see me just pause for a moment and twist the end of the SS17. Right there, I did it. As you're extending that out, just by the way you turn your wrist, you might twist the wire at the top of your SS17. You'll be able to see that with your eyes as you're extending it. Just turn it back the opposite direction and everything straightens out. Finish getting your tactical delta loop all the way up in the air, and same thing, extend your section one at a time. taking your time to be sure that you don't pull it out of the end of the next section, and everything will work just fine before you know it. You have a tactical delta loop flying on top of a fiberglass mast. I don't know that I would recommend this with any other mast other than this one from Chameleon. My exposure to fiberglass masts are those that typically you would fly a wire antenna, but if you're going to put a tactical delta loop on top of it, you better make sure you have a robust mast that can take that torque at the top with that metal fitting that's up there with the 3/8 by 24 thread. Pretty impressive. In my HOA, I proudly fly the American flag atop my 20-foot flagpole. Or is it an antenna mast? The answer is yes, it's both. If you follow that wire down to the side of the house, that utility box that houses a HOA Hybrid Mini. That's right, the Chameleon antenna POTA mast allows me to fly the American flag, follow the rules of the HOA, and still have up a permanent antenna wire to operate in the shack to my heart's content. This is a semi-permanent installation for me. I've put a concrete pillar in the ground that holds the POTA mast, and you can just yank that POTA mast right out of the ground and take it portable. If you want to fly a wire from it, no need to make any modifications. If you want to put the MPAS, the light, or the tactical delta loop, then we need to take the top polymer cap off of it and add in the topper to the POTA mast. Let's show you how to do that. It is as simple as it looks. Remove the 2 screws holding the polymer cap, insert the topper, and put the 2 machine screws through the POTA mast top and into the topper that holds it in place. When I was at the park, I was using the drive-on POTA mast mount as well as the hitch mount. I'm moving a little bit slow here on the hitch mount. You'll understand that in a second. I'm actually putting this in with an antenna on top of it already. I'll explain myself. When I was using the fiberglass mast, I was cheating and using the POTA mast mounts and just putting an insert to get that down to the fiberglass mount size. And of course, here I am doing what you've seen me do multiple times now throughout this video, getting that HOA Hybrid Micro or Mini on top of that topper, which goes into the POTA mast. This is an unbelievably flexible piece of gear that can get you into a number of different applications and setups. It's not only backyard semi-permanent, you can pull it out of that concrete pillar and go portable with this. Think field day, think of POTA activation. I recognize it's not as small as the ground spike, right? It's bipolar in size to that ground spike, but it's pretty impressive what you can accomplish with this. What I'm doing now is showing the installation of the tactical delta loop from a ladder setup. When I did it on the ground, you'll understand in a minute why I did that, but you have options and decisions. You can put these antennas together on the ground and slowly lift them up and set them in place, or you'll need a ladder because the POTA mast itself has some height to it. And by the time you get to the top of the antenna that you're trying to erect, whether it's the SS17 or the tactical delta loop, and you're trying to extend the length of the SS17, that gets a bit challenging. You need a ladder to pull that off. So you need to decide how you're going to do that. I'm running this at hyper speed here in the video so that I don't take up all of your time. I want to get on to the actual lifting up the POTA mast with the antennas already installed, and we need to take care when we're doing that. Let's get to it right now. This is the SS17, so the MPAS light on top of my POTA mast. So my POTA mast is 20 feet tall. They come in 15, 20, and 25. So we have a 20-foot tall POTA mast with an SS17, 17 feet. So we're 37 feet in the air. I've stayed away far enough so you can see how quickly this gets up in the air, as well as you could get a very good view of how slowly and carefully I raised this antenna that was already put together. Let's jump on over to the MPAS 2.0. You know this as 2 antenna sections that are screwed together. This is 18 feet, 2.5 inches plus 20, or 25 if you have the 25-foot POTA mast. For me, I am now 38 feet, 2.5 inches into the air. Again, carefully and slowly lifting this up once it was assembled on the ground. And you can see how quickly I get 38 feet in the air. What an incredible feature from such a strong and durable portable mast. Portable. portable mast. This is amazing that we have a device that can get us this high in the air for portable, whether that is field day, whether that's emergency communications, or you're just on a POTA activation. Here I'm showing you a setup that you just might not think is possible. Can the tactical delta loop be set up on the ground? And of course, I'm going to do this at fast speed. This is the 5th time you've seen me put this together, but you've not seen me put it together on the ground. As long as you pay attention to what you're doing and take care, you can take those two 17-foot SS17s, extend them out with the 25-foot wire that goes in between them. And you can do that on the ground. Just make sure your wire does not get hooked onto anything. And you can spread this out almost as easily as if it were in the air. So if you want to get on a ladder, you can do that. If you want to do this on the ground, you can do that as well. Just take care as you're doing it, not to stress any of the components of the system. Before you lift any of these antennas that you've assembled on the ground, make sure they're not caught on anything. Consider the easiest way to lift it without stressing the components. Slowly put it up in the air and take it to where your mount is. For me, it's that concrete pillar in the ground, and in seconds. I have a tactical delta loop. This is the most unwieldy of the systems that I've installed. It's two SS17s at 17 feet and a 25-foot wire. A triangle, upside down, 25 by 17 by 17, assembled on the ground, put in the air, no problem on the PortaMast. Let's go operate. How about that? Let's have some fun. Let's get on the air. The only question left to answer is with which of these 3 antennas and 5 mount configurations are we going to begin sending RF down range? I don't know. It's not 3 times 5. If only I had 15 options from which to choose, but it's 20, 25, 30, 40. I'm not sure that we're going to get to the end of it by this series completion, and maybe some of the heavy lifting is going to have to go over to you. There are just so many options. Truly, the modular portable antenna system. Isn't it great that we have this many options for portable ops, backyard portable, POTA, field day, EmComm? Thanks, Chameleon, for the opportunity to share this with the ham radio community. I hope you're having as much fun with this as I am, friend. Talk to you soon. 73.